and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, has council had the opportunity to review the meeting minutes of November 21st? If so, how do you wish to proceed?
Make a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Motion from Robin, second from Becky. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Any changes to this evening's agenda? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion for the set agenda.
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried. Guests in open forum. Seeing no guests in open forum for the open forum, we'll move into committee reports. Planning Commission.
Planning Commission, we'll cover 2 meetings. We had our regularly scheduled Planning Commission meeting Monday, November 27th. We didn't have any Planning Commission type items, but we did have a another lengthy presentation. As you know, we're doing the zoning code rewrite. So the consultants, they've been bringing back items as they've been having questions on it. So we had some discussions there. That was the main item. Then we also talked about upcoming vacancies. We do have 2 on the Planning Commission for this year. So those are, I believe, posted. They were posted right away, if I recall. Yep, they are posted. So yeah, that's what I got for that. And then the only other item, last night we had a special Planning Commission meeting, and that item is 8 Alpha on our agenda tonight. So we'll save the discussion for that.
All right. How about Golf Committee?
Canceled.
All right, and the joint planning also canceled. So any other committees that we missed? None. We'll go into board, committee, and consultant reports. We have the rezoning of multiple properties to Industrial 3. Mr. Sanders.
Thank you, Mayor, Council. For you tonight, we have a rezoning. This is what Commissioner Hendrickson had mentioned that we reviewed last night. This was a special meeting, public hearing for this rezoning. It's 295 acres located on the north, actually I'll just say west side of Becker, so south of Highway 10. The property is owned by Excel, and this is part of their just site readiness and prep for what they're doing over there as part of their transition. The future land use of the parcels in our comprehensive plan is industrial reserve, and that's shown in the Exhibit A, Figure 1.2 as part of the RCA, and that aligns with our Industrial 3 zoning district. As staff reviewed that was the fit. The iGen is what that used to be. If you remember recently, we redid the naming of those zoning districts. The rezoning meets multiple goals from our comprehensive plan, including some of the economic development and land use ones as well. Planning Commission did hold a public hearing last night. There was minimal public comment. We didn't receive anything written before that. Just some comments asking about what types of uses can be on that property, it's a pretty broad range. It's large industrial. It includes everything that you can do in I-2 and I-1 as well. So there's a lot of different things that could occur there. And then just some questions in general about development in the area. With that, Planning Commission did recommend approval of the rezone. And so tonight, staff is seeking for a motion and a second, adopting 277 second series to rezone these properties and ordinance 277 summary for publishing. And this was part of, just for the public, this was a recent annexation. So this was recently approved by both the city and the township to annex the property into the city of Becker. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 277 second series, revising section 1112, rezoning property from agricultural to industrial 3 I3.
I'll second that.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Carried.
I'll make a motion to adopt ordinance 277 second series summary for publishing purposes.
I'll second that.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Those in favor can state aye.
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 Opposed? Carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Administrator and staff reports. Encroachment agreement for Quick Trip. Mr. Sanders.
Yes, thank you, Mayor, Council. So as you know, Quick Trip is, we received permits for them a little while ago. One of the things that gets involved when you do any sort of construction projects is the city engineer looks at those, and on some of these, sometimes stormwater can be different between sites. In this case, the city engineer made multiple comments. A couple are pointed out here, and this is the reason that staff is seeking approval of an encroachment into the drainage utility easements on, won't be all of them, but it'll be some portions of them. So the first comment that the engineer made was to adjust that inlet to minimize potential for short circuiting, which has to do with the flow of water. And then 18.6 of the MPCA's construction permit, they must design basins to prevent the short circuiting. So in this case, due to some of the topographic issues on the site, the minimum build considerations that Quick Trip has to do to solve these items without removing, because otherwise they'd have to remove a catch basin, which would actually increase runoff to the street and sewer. So by allowing them to encroach in the drainage utility easement, which it's meant for utility purposes and these are stormwater infrastructure purposes, staff is comfortable recommending that. Met with Public Works and the engineer on this as well, so we're comfortable with allowing those to be in there with the approval of the council and with the condition that Quick Trip execute an encroachment agreement. That encroachment agreement and waiver of liability, legal has done kind of a cursory review on it. There is a, in the resolution, there is one condition that would allow the attorney to make changes as to form if Quick Trip has some or if they have some to kind of go back and forth. But again, this would allow them to go into those areas where the city engineer deems it necessary in the drainage utility easements on the property. And then that encroachment agreement allow them to do that, but then it would waive any liability of the city should they have to, should somebody have to go in and take structures out or do work in there. So with that, staff is seeking a motion and a second adopting resolution 23-126, authorizing an encroachment agreement and waiver of liability to Quick Trip. And with that, I will answer any questions.
I'll make a motion adopting resolution 23-126, authorizing an encroachment agreement and waiver of liability to Quick Trip.
I'll second that.
Motion from Becky, second from Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call for public hearing for vacation of part of the former township road. Mr. Sanders.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. You'll get sick of my voice by the end of this. So, before you tonight, we have, if you remember, G&K first edition plat was recently approved. That was Gary Hammer's property. And prior to plats being printed for signatures, they always do one last check at the county. So the Public Works Department does a lot of their checks. The recorders, they'll do a lot of those checks before they print the Mylars because they're expensive. And that catches any sort of legal recording issues. One of the things that was noted on MnDOT maps, it's not noted on any township road order maps at the county or city, but it is still shown on MnDOT's highway maps was a township road. It's shown as just a note on the plat, but they couldn't find any sort of information either at the township or the city or county level that shows that this was actually vacated, besides a note that says it needs to be. And that road was realigned years ago. So the intent, really, there's no, in fact, it's grown over now, there's really nothing there, it doesn't serve public benefit, but to ensure that title is clear and that Mr. Hammer can record this, it's important that that be vacated. So staff is recommending that it be vacated formally, and that would, in this case, we need to call for the public hearing first. That public hearing would be held at the December 19th meeting at about 5 p.m. And notices with the proposed resolution would be provided to affected parties, so abutting property owners. We usually use our 350 feet as recommended by legal. So with that, we're just seeking for a motion and a second, adopting resolution 23-125, setting a public hearing held on Tuesday, December 19th at 5. And the legal description in there does cover what's in the city currently. So if there's other township portions in the future on other properties, that would be something that those property owners at the township would do at their level, because those are currently in the township.
Okay.
Is there any questions?
I actually remember the road.
I'm like, why is he giggling?
I was wondering
over
why
here?
he's laughing,
Oh.
so.
This is why you're here, Mike.
Picture, it had to go before
Yep.
1970, because it was prior to Highway 10 getting 4 lanes, so.
Yeah.
No, it was before Highway 25 was paved.
Well, I was wondering I was wondering why you were laughing. I was like, do I have
I
something
know,
on my
I was like,
face,
I
or-
wasn't understanding the humor. I was like, what's going on?
Mike and Pa Engels used to hunt out there.
Let's see, I make a motion to approve resolution 23-125, call for public hearing on vacation of, road.
Second.
Motion from Mike, second from Robin. Any other discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Call for public hearing to consider changes to the city fee schedule. Ms. Bleasy.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. At the end of each year, staff recommends changes to the city's fee schedule for consideration by council. According to statute, this does need to be done by ordinance. So tonight, following past practices, a public hearing is requested. So I'm asking for a motion by council to call for that public hearing. I'll take any questions or a motion.
I'll make a motion to call for a public hearing on December 19th at approximately 5 PM to consider changes to Chapter 2, Section 2.19, addressing the city's fee schedule.
Second.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Any discussion on that? With none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
Thank you.
Thanks. Fire Department Property Ownership, Mr. LaRude.
Mayor Bertram, City Council members, the Becker Fire Department has operated as a joint powers organization for a number of years. And in the last year or so, the city and the township and the fire board have been working to make the operation independent of both the township and the city. And one of those things has to do with ownership. Right now, we believe all the vehicles are owned by the fire department, but the building and the real estate around it are owned by the city exclusively. And likely this was done because the city issued the bonds for the construction, so the city had to retain ownership. Now that we're moving to be the fire departments can be independent, they're gonna have some requirements that cities and other governments have, one of them being an audit. And so it'll be important that we make sure that the assets and liabilities properly go with the fire department. And on top of that, the township has paid for their proportional share of the debt service, so they have an ownership stake in the building. And so it's important that we transfer ownership formally to the JPA, to the fire board. And in talking with the city attorney, he recommended a quick claim to do that. So the city passed quick claim. It would propose to be accepted on the 18th at the fire board meeting, to be recorded against the property. We still retain our percentage of ownership, and if there was ever a dissolution of the fire department, JPA, all of the property becomes the city's property. We would have to pay the township their proportional share, but ultimately it would come back to the city in dissolution. Otherwise, we retain our share of ownership rights. So with that, staff would recommend a motion to adopt resolution 23-124, which approves a quitclaim deed. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Make a motion to approve, resolution 23-124, approving a quitclaim deed to transfer ownership of the fire department, real estate and building from City of Becker to the fire department.
Oh, second.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Consent agenda, Mr. LaRude.
Items for consideration on tonight's consent agenda include approving the hiring and termination report for Pebble Creek Golf Course in the Becker Community Center. Adopt resolution 23-127, a resolution approving the addition of designated routes to the municipal state aid and street system for the city of Becker. I will point out the request of the engineer, the resolution has been amended to eliminate the mileage of each route. That'd be the only change, so it would just be the description of roads. Their recommendation was that it's not required to do so as part of the resolution, and if there were errors in calculation, it allowed for segment correction prior to state approval. Next item is approve the 2024 tobacco license renewals as presented. Approve the 2024 cannabinoid license renewal as presented. Approve the 2024 combination massage establishment business and massage therapist license renewals as presented. Approve pay app number 5, the final pay app, in the amount of $76,087.41 to Minnesota Paving and Materials for the 2023 street improvement project. And approve pay request number 1 in the amount of $9,665.30 to McDowell Company for the 2023 Community Center HVAC air handling unit replacement project. And with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I'll second.
Motion from Robin, second from Becky. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Payment of the bills.
Motion to pay the bills.
Second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. Anniversary announcements for the month of December, we have 3. Bart Gevins is our Community Center Recreation Services Manager, and he's celebrating 5 years with us. Julie Krenz is our Administrative Assistant at the Community Center, and she's celebrating her 2nd year, and I believe that 2nd year as full-time. She was part-time prior to that. And then Jackson Fluke is the Assistant Kitchen Supervisor, and he's celebrating his 1st year with us. So congratulations to those individuals. And then we are on to does council have anything else for the betterment of Becker? I do. The remembrance tree that used to be in the City Hall Plaza is now over at the Becker Community Center. You'll see it, it is near the road. It has like an arch system gathered to it, and it is lit up in white lights. Next to it is a box that contains the ornaments with like a wire hanger, so please stop by. Go ahead and write your loved one's name on there that you are wishing to remember this holiday season and place it on the tree. If there is no other else betterments, I am going to ask for a motion to go into recess so that we can come back at 6 p.m. for the truth and taxation.
Make that motion.
I'll second.
Motion from Robin, second from Rick. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are in recess at 5:17 p.m. All right, we will go ahead and complete the recess, and I will ask council to make a motion to reconvene our council
We
meeting.
reconvene.
I'll second.
Okay, so motion from Mike, second from Becky to reconvene. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, carried. We are reconvened at 6 PM. I'll go ahead and open the public hearing for the Truth in Taxation 2024 budget presentation. Mr. Ebensteiner.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. Here tonight to present the 2024 final budget and levy. So agenda for tonight, I'll go over a presentation, a PowerPoint that myself and finance staff have put together on the 2024 levy and budget. I'll take any city council comments or questions. We'll open it up for any public comment. And then we'll look at adopting the resolutions related to the 2024 budget and levy. So jumping right in, just a big picture, just want to talk about the purpose of the budget. You know, it really creates that roadmap as we look into this next fiscal year. So the council really provides a direction of the service levels and establishing those spending limits. City staff really understand those performance expectations. And then residents determine where the city officials and leaders are focusing resources and what the objectives are that they're working to accomplish. So really a kind of a three-pronged approach. Just a snapshot of the timeline. It feels like only yesterday, but you know, already in May, June, we kicked off the budget season, looking at some of those CIP and budget workshops. In July, we had a couple formal budget workshops with council, a couple evenings where we went into a lot of detail. Moving forward into September, where we approved that preliminary EDA and city property tax levies. Made a stopping point in October where we discussed the enterprise budgets. In November, residents received their truth in taxation notices from the county. And here we are December 5th with the truth in taxation hearing. And we'll go into some detail there, and then we'll eventually do at the end of December is where we certify the levy to Sherburne County as well as the Department of Revenue. So a long timeline. It feels like it was just yesterday, but here we are already planning for next fiscal year. So just an overview. You know, a lot of times, especially on the general fund side, it's really an expense focused budget. So we're looking at where those expenditures are to provide those services. You know, the functional expenses, general government, public safety, which includes police and fire, public works and streets, parks and rec, and then EDA. So we're really focusing on those line item details in the expense, and then that really drives the revenue, which you'll see in some of these future slides as well. But you know, big ones, and especially the general fund licenses and permitting. We look at what revenues are coming from other governmental agencies, what opportunities we have for grants, charges or services, and then some of the other miscellaneous, and then in the end, it's that tax levy that needs to cover those additional expenditures. And as you'll see, our city's revenue sources are primarily focused on that tax revenue side. So on the expense side, starting off with the general fund, there, you know, we plan a lot of those details. We are a service providing entity, so you know, the essential part of our service is our staff. Wage inflation and compensation changes are part of this budget, and then utility costs. We did see a big spike into '23, and we can continue to see those here in '24. So the overall general fund budget at $5,893,075. Increase of around 8% from 2023. The big increase you'll see, public safety, that was driven primarily from building inspection. We did bring building inspection in-house in '23. That was not budgeted for, so that budget is reflected in the 2024 budget. And then you also, the union wages are included in there. As well, so the 17% on the public safety side, the 8% overall. So the pie chart give you a grasp of, those broken out into, where those funds are being spent. General government made up of city council, admin, clerk, finance, professional services, and planning, around 32%. Public safety at 38%, made up of police, fire, there's the fire relief pass-through, and then also building inspection is included in there. So that 38% has increased from prior years on the portion for public safety, but directly related to the building inspection. And then also the way we record our fire expenditures, those are brought into the general fund just for presentation purposes. So that ticked up on the public safety side, and then the public works and parks and rec, really our public services at 30%. So they're very consistent outside of some of the changes on the public safety side for this year's budget. So for the revenue budget, as I mentioned, there, especially on the general fund side, we really focus in on, licensing and permits, what kind of activity we're going to have, especially now that we have building inspection in-house. We get a really good gauge of where we're gonna see those. We get some grants, charges for services, and then really that tax levy amount really meets the remaining funding necessary for us, which you'll see in this next chart. So here you do see taxes make up about 90% of our general fund revenues, licenses and permits at 5%. We get some intergovernmental revenue from other government agencies of 3%, and then just some miscellaneous other revenues of a couple percent. So really the tax revenue does drive our sources. Just a quick stop over the other portion of the expenditure side. We do look on the budgeting on the special revenue fund. So we do have the community center, EDA, and golf. The community center up 8%, about a little under $100,000. So there, as membership has recovered, we are at pre-pandemic levels of membership, and even ticking higher than that. As of December 1st, we're over 1,000 members at the community center, which we've never had before. So continue to see those tick up, but we also have, community center is a service-driven entity, so a lot of personnel costs, heavy on the utility side, so we continue to monitor those. EDA, a smaller budget, decreased slightly. There, we're really looking at maximizing the levy available through the EDA levy, which is based on the taxable market value. So they're at $257,000. And then golf, up 11%. Their golf activities have just continued to increase. We've had, more foot traffic up there, more rounds golfed, and with that, more maintenance, more utilities on that side. So up 11% on golf. An item to note, which you'll see, actually I'll point it out in this next slide with golf. So taking a snapshot at the proposed levy, general fund levy up 4.88%, up to $5.2 million. Really the general fund, the focus on investing in staff and people that provide those services, and then the utilities is the key driver there. EDA levy is up 3.7%. That's set based on the estimated market value, so that's just maxed out at what's available. Really looking at saving up for future development activities, which we have been able to set aside some good reserves as we continue to look at development within the city. Community center operations up 2%. That really just driven by personnel and utility costs. Pebble Creek, which I had mentioned, so there, it's the second year now that we haven't had a levy. If you look back a few years, we were upwards of $200,000 for an operating levy, decreased to $84,000, and this is the second consecutive year with the zero levy at the golf course on the operations side. Debt service, just over $1 million, up 7.4%, just in line with what's needed for the prior approved debt service levies. And then capital, hovering just over $3 million, really that focus on investment in streets and infrastructure. So the overall levy, looking at an increase of 3.4% at $10,148,066. Expanding a little bit on the capital levies, so here within that $3 million, you can see the allocation. Really not going to go through each line item, but really, the public works and streets, really the focus on maintaining the street reconstruction and improvements, and then really front-loading some of those projects as we look at our transitioning tax base with some of the future Sherco decommissioning. Just a reminder there, we do have some, we are looking at the facility needs where we may make an equity contribution if that does move forward in '24. Just a few items to highlight on the capital projects. We are looking at some street refurbishment and reconstruction projects, some police squad and radio replacements, parks and trail improvements and life extensions. Golf course is looking at a strategic cart path restoration and also looking at the parking lot ceiling. Community center locker room renovations. I know Jacob's working on the zoning and subdivision code updates. City Hall renovation, if that does move forward with that contribution, and then also evaluating the Public Works building refurbishment. So that along with some other activities as well. So debt profile, just a quick reminder, this is what our profile looks like. So currently at the end of 2023, we'll have just over $7 million remaining on our GO street reconstruction bonds that were issued in 2021. And then we also have an additional $2.3 million of the GO wastewater revenue bonds. And as a reminder, those are paid by LPI for some of the industrial wastewater improvements that were completed back in 2016. So those will be maturing in 2025. And then we'll be possibly looking at some bonds for the facility renovation if we do move forward with that. But definitely have minimal debt on the books and capacity to take some on as we're strategic on some of those future capital projects that we do plan. So taking a step back, really looked at the revenues and expenditures. Then you're looking at more on the tax rate side. So there we look at value and capacity. So Sherburne County Assessor does set the values. We had the Board of Equalization, Appeal and Equalization was held in April, where we did take questions from the public on values. So as a reminder, we have our taxable market value. So that's the basis for the levy application. And then we have our net tax capacity. So that's really the class rate. So it's a formula that's applied to your taxable market value. So looking at some preliminary numbers from Sherburne County, where they're at, they're still taking in some veteran and some homestead adjustments here in December. But based on the information they did provide us, residential values are up about 8%. That's a combination of new housing as well as increases in values. Commercial industrial up 24.5%. And then utility, primarily focused on the state assessed portion of the utility, was down 4.7%. So overall, we saw a tax capacity increase of about 1.1% based on those preliminary numbers from the county. So we'll see some change there. So for what we see for tax rate, that could change slightly, but this is for the most part where we should see it ending up. So this is a nice snapshot just to really look at what goes into the city's tax rate. So you have your total taxes to be generated by your levy. So that's everything we've talked about. Have our operating capital improvement and debt service levies. So an increase from 23 to 24 up to that 10.148 million, increase of about 3.4%. And then you divide that by your total tax capacity available to generate those taxes. So there you see an increase of about 1.1%. So we estimate our tax rate will increase from 46.048 to 47.082. Looking at a trend over the last 5 years from 2020 to 2024, there just seeing that steady uptick. As we bring on more capacity, there is that need for more city services. So you see the increase of the capacity from about 17.8 million up to 21.5. You see that uptick in the tax levy and then the related increase in the tax rate. And then a key point that we've talked about all the way through the budget cycle and that we touched on last year was that allocation of the tax capacity. As we are transitioning away from the utility, and as their values change and some of our residential and other commercial tick up, there is a little bit of a transition going on. So as you see in 2022, residential made up 21% of the pie. 2023 estimated around 23%. Commercial industrial went up about 3% from 22 to 23. And then the utility did decrease 4%. So that's where we have discussed, and as we get into 2024 and 2025, that's where that transition aid that was approved by the state, that's where that'll supplement. So we're seeing some of that just organically right now with values, and then we'll see that continue into 2025 as the units are fully decommissioned and we move forward, and we'll see some more changes in that tax capacity allocation. So here, then it's the question, what does this mean to the average resident? What does this mean to the average commercial business? So on the residential side and commercial and industrial, we just gave some snapshots of where that estimated rate would put a homeowner. So here a homeowner at a $450,000 home with a 3% increase would see a change in their combined tax of $102, so about $8.54 per month. A commercial business at a $7.5 million value at a 10% value increase would see an increase of about $8,600, about $717 per month. And then I think the key takeaway here also is on the utility side. So this is the state assessed portion, about $735 million of our overall value. Would see a decrease, about $176,000, but they still make up about 65% of our overall levy collected. So for every dollar we collect, that state assessed portion would collect 65 cents. And as you can see for residential, it's less than 0.02%. That commercial business at $7.5 million, less than 1%. So that transition aid, it will play a key point, and there'll be a lot of decisions in the future on that service level and how we move forward. So here's just another quick snapshot just of your annual levy. So here a $350,000 market value residence calculated tax amount would be $1,621 annually. So a monthly amount of $135. So how is that $135 spent by the city on a monthly basis? So $3.30 for EDA. The Special Revenue Fund, the Community Center, $7.82 to support that debt service levy. So those bonds that were issued to support our street reconstruction, $13.96. The capital improvement levy. So those are all those levies going into all the different buckets for all the projects that are identified. A little over $40, and then just the general fund operating, general government, public safety, fire. Public works, streets, plowing streets, right around $70 per month for that $1,621 annual amount. So just kind of a breakout of how those residential taxes are used. So now jumping forward to enterprise funds as we wrap up, that's really the focus of the governmental funds with the general fund and the special revenue funds. So on the enterprise side, we are proposing increases in rates for both water and sewer. So the water side, a 4% rate increase on water usage and the base service fees for 2024. And then on domestic sewer, proposing a 4% rate increase on the base domestic sewer usage charge and Tier 2 domestic sewer usage charges. So I'll go into a little bit of detail for each of those funds. So on the revenue side, you see that increase of the 4.5%, primarily related to expected usage and then those rate changes. Then we have the operating expenses going up about 7.6%, really focused on some of those personnel costs and operating costs that go into maintaining our water system. So operating result, increase of right around $400,000. We do have some significant capital spend planned for 2024 as some items have rolled over on that side. So really, we are using some reserves, but that was planned as part of our rate study and right in line with our cash flow needs with what's available. And then just a quick snapshot just to give residents a pulse of, how much it costs for water. So in 2023, that first 6,000 gallons per month would cost $2.75 per 1,000 gallons. So they're 0.00275 cents per gallon, or for every dollar would be 364 gallons. And then that's increasing just slightly per month cost, $2.86 per 1,000 gallons. You'd get 350 gallons for that same dollar in 2024. Domestic sewer budget. So there, the increase in revenue here, 21%. We are proposing some increases in revenue for some of the leachate that we're bringing in to domestic sewer. And then we are, on the expense side, we are holding back on a previously planned operator position, really looking at what our needs are as we bring on some of the industrial assets in 2024. And then really the capital spend is driving a lot of the expenditure in 2024, right around 1.4 million. So that capital spend really looks at that cash flow needs. We had set aside those funds in the past. Some of those projects got pushed off, and we are looking at completing those in 2024. And on the industrial sewer side, we are looking at proposing some usage rate increases, and then there on the expenditure side are seeing that slight decrease with holding back on filling that position. And much like water and domestic sewer, really that focus on the cash flow needs. We had completed the rate study in 2021. As we roll forward, we'll look at completing a rate study here either in 24 or 25 to kind of reset where we're at, look at those cash flow needs and the capital needs, and then move forward from there. So just a quick snapshot on capital projects for the enterprise funds. Water is looking at some water tower painting and washing, truck replacement, backup generator, domestic sewer, fine screen and compactor, backup generator and roofing, and then industrial sewer, some roofing and some makeup air units. So some exciting things going on with some capital projects that Chris and his staff have planned. So with that, just a little bit of a wrap up. Budget questions can be directed to myself, the finance director, at the number listed there, or my email address. Property value questions can be directed to the county assessor at that number. And then the Board of Appeal and Equalization meeting will be held in April of 2024 here at Becker City Council Chambers. So with that, just wanted to take an opportunity to thank council for all your work during the 2024 budget cycle, directors, staff that all contributed. It was a great, fruitful process and a lot of good discussion about how services are provided and some of the big changes that will take place as we move forward into 2024. So with that, would stand for any council comments, questions, or open it up for public comments as well.
When you deal with it all summer long.
Yeah, right.
I think the fact that we can, I think I was especially concerned coming into this budget season, just knowing the external factors that, likely to have a double-digit health insurance, knowing fuel, obviously,
Wages.
wages. I mean, there was a lot of factors that, as you said, we're a service provider, and to provide the exact same services, not add anything, but just provide the exact same services, there was going to be a lot of things. And so to emerge from, with all that, with a 3% increase, I think is good work by everybody. I guess that's wasn't easy.
I was expecting it to be much harder.
With the decrease in utility, so that was.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody from the audience have any comments? That we are in a public hearing.
I'll make a motion to close the public hearing.
I'll second it.
All right. Rick, motion from Rick, second from Mike. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
We are closed 6:24 for the public hearing. Go ahead.
And I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 23-121, adopting the final governmental fund budget and levy for the city of Becker for taxes payable 2024.
I'll second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Any discussion? Hearing none, those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 23-122, adopting the final levy for the EDA for city of Becker taxes payable 2024.
Second that as well.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried. And one last one.
Yeah, enterprise. Then I'll make a motion to adopt resolution 23-123, adopting the final 2024 budget for city of Becker water, domestic sewer, and industrial sewer funds.
Second.
Motion from Rick, second from Robin. Those in favor can state aye.
Aye.
Opposed, carried.
I'll make a
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Motion from Rick, second from Mike. Those in favor may state aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned at 6:26.